What's up, guys? This is another edition of our Family Fitness Fun podcast. I have our registered dietitian and nutrition coach, Ari Fiorita, on with us today. I was glad to finally connect with you, Ari, and get you back on.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's always a good time.
Yeah, so real quick, you did a goat yoga today, and the last experience I had with a goat was in college, and I wasn't a fan of it. So tell me what this goat yoga was.
Yeah, it was actually a group of girls from the gym, and they had just little goats, like literally running around. There was probably 20 of them. And you're kind of doing yoga, but more so you're just laughing at the goats. And it's all good. It's fun. I've never done it before. So this was my first time. I had no expectations and I definitely smelled afterwards. So I had to
So it was like a regular yoga class, but just had goats running around. Is that what I'm getting?
Yeah, I mean there's an instructor and she kind of walks you through, but you can't really like do a lot of downward dog without goats biting your hair and jumping over you.
That's just definitely an experience. I got it.
Yeah, it was fun though. You should do it.
Where was this?
It was called Just Like Home Farm in Kirtland.
Oh,
They have so many animals. There's like alpacas and dogs and ducks chasing us around.
I like love it because I'm just like sitting there thinking like somebody like had this idea to be like, let's do yoga here. This is great.
Yeah. I don't know how the first person they were just doing yoga in the barn and goats came up and I mean it's not like relaxing, but it makes you laugh.
That sounds like fun. That's cool. All right, so really quick, I wanted to talk to you. So I'm always fascinated in talking with people like nutrition coaching, when you're helping other people. Because obviously, like if you're like training people, they need to do a workout. It's something tangible you can give them. I think nutrition coaching is a little bit harder. So I'm always interested in kind of your feedback on how you approach different things. So first of all, I wanted to talk about goal setting. So obviously, like in January, February, March, people are starting to get where they set these goals for the year or whatever. Do you think that do people set unrealistic goals, like just in general?
I think long story short, yes. And I think they have good intentions. Like I always love when people are like, "Oh, I want to do all these awesome things. I want to lose this weight and get really fit and, go to the beach and feel really really good about myself in a couple months." But I think that the fact that people are so ambitious, sometimes they either set like way too lofty of goals for the period of time that they have,
Yeah.
or they set way too many. And I've been guilty of this myself.
Yeah.
So I think long story short, yes, like most people are setting somewhat unrealistic goals from time to time.
Okay. So like let's just like talk about a 6 week basis. Like if somebody wants to lose weight, because that's usually what their goals are. What is it like a realistic goal you could tell people like, all right, in 6 weeks you should lose this amount? What do you usually tell people?
Yeah. So for most people, when losing weight sustainably, I recommend 1 to 2 pounds per week. And kind of the same thing goes for a 6 week challenge. You might lose a little bit more on the front side, especially if all of a sudden you're really motivated to start working out more consistently and eating
Yeah.
better. But I think 1 to 2 pounds per week is a good expectation over a 6 week period. And then kind of going on from there just to build some momentum.
No, I agree with that. That's what I usually tell people. Um, I think over 6 weeks, don't you think like I would just say for like a normal male, because I think males generally tend to lose a little more weight, no?
Yeah.
Usually a little bit heavier. So I think a girl losing like 8 pounds is almost equivalent to a guy losing like 11 or 12 pounds. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, that sounds about right. Most
Yeah.
males have a little bit more lean body mass. Obviously, testosterone plays a role too.
Yeah.
And they're likely, like, I have a lot of couples that I counsel from time to time, and we see that, like, she's like, "Oh, my husband lost 10 pounds. I only lost two." And so
Right.
I think it can be really kind of discouraging, but we
Yeah.
have to remember that women's physiology is a lot different,
Yeah.
especially because of just the lean body mass component.
Yeah. But I just think, most guys are generally heavier. Like, for me to lose 5 pounds is gonna be way easier than my wife to lose 5 pounds because she only weighs 135 pounds or whatever. You know what I mean?
For sure. Yeah.
Right.
If you have a lot more weight to lose, it's going to be a lot easier. I think for males and females, like if
Yeah.
you're like naturally a bigger person, you're going to lose weight a little bit more quickly than
Yeah.
somebody who doesn't have as much weight to lose.
And that's why a lot of these challenges, they'll do like percentage of your body weight lost.
Yeah.
So if you lose, you have a 330-pound guy loses 10 pounds, and then a 200-pound person loses 10 pounds, it's not really the same, right?
Right. Right.
What about from like a body fat perspective? Is people like that too? Like what
Yeah,
would you
that's
say
a
in
good
60?
question. I don't know like necessarily like percentage wise. I think somewhere around like 5 to 10% is what I've seen. 10% is probably aggressive in 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think like trying to keep it, it also I think like measurements and things like that are something that usually comes along with challenges. So I
Yeah.
think when you're thinking of like weight on the scale, but also getting measurements, also looking at body fat and like body composition, it takes a long time to build lean body mass and to actually lose body fat. So I
Yeah.
would say probably 5% ish on average, but that's
Yeah.
probably, a little bit on the higher side.
Yeah. I think so too. What I've kind of seen is like when we do these challenges and stuff, it's like if you lose 3% like in 6 weeks, that's pretty good. I mean,
Yeah,
you did it right. You know what I mean?
for sure.
So what do you think, from like a male, what's like a healthy body fat, would you say? Like healthy, not like obviously we know just because of what I learned in school, I kind of have an idea, but people
Mhm.
ask me and I think it's kind of, you have to take into account the person's life situation, stuff like that, don't you think?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. For somebody who, is coming to the gym and they're 18 years old, they're obviously going to be a little bit lower body fat than somebody who is, 40 years old, working a full-time job, has a family,
Yeah.
and other commitments. And so, I think that when we're thinking of like the standard population, I think that, it's kind of hard, in a CrossFit gym because a lot of people depends on also how long you've been doing it. But I think for men, usually like 18 to 24% is where people
Yeah.
start off. And then when they're coming in, like for most people in like the fitness space, 14 to like 18% ish.
Yeah.
And then for females, obviously it's gonna be a little bit higher because we need more body fat for hormone regulation and things like that.
Yes. Yeah, that's what I would say. So I usually look at females as like 10, like almost 10% higher. Is that right?
Yeah.
Or is it maybe more 8%, or what do you usually see on that?
Yeah, I would say like so generally the range for females under like 30% is like healthy, whereas under 24% is healthy for men.
Yeah.
So like 5 to 10% difference.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's good. I always thought for me, like being under 15% is kind of like healthy, you know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah,
Like
I
that's
think
kind of
like
what,
when I'm seeing people like actually want to like see like definition, they want to change body
yeah,
composition, they want to feel like really good. I tighten that window up a little bit more. So like
yeah,
20 to 5% for females, probably somewhere around like 15% for most males.
yeah,
And then once you get lower than that, like you're really looking at people who are just like a little bit higher level and putting a little
yeah,
bit more time and effort into it.
yeah, for sure. What are some other things that you like to measure? Because I think that measure, like some people like they're like, well, you shouldn't really focus on the scale and all that, and I get it. But I do think setting like tangible goals and then seeing that progress is definitely something that there's nothing wrong with that. You know what I mean? So what outside of body fat and weight, what else would you kind of measure?
Yeah. Like you said, I think like having those tangible goals is important because people want to see something and they want to know that they're making progress.
Yeah.
But I also really like to track other things like energy levels throughout the day. A lot of people get those like 3 p.m. dips, and usually that's an indication that their blood sugar is kind of all over the place. So energy is a big one. How
Yeah.
are you doing in your workouts? Are you feeling like really gassed, really exhausted? Are you starting to feel like you can push a little bit more during your workout session? And also how you're recovering from your workouts the next day and the next day after that. And then how you're sleeping. So sleep is a huge indicator. It kind of is a double-edged sword. If you're not sleeping well, you're not going to do as well in the gym, but also if you're kind of able to push yourself and recover well, you're probably sleeping a lot deeper too.
Yeah.
And then I also like to look at digestion. So is somebody having a bowel movement every day, which people always chuckle when I ask them that,
Yeah.
but digestion is huge and it's a major indicator of your health. And so if you're not having one every day, there's probably other things going on that we need to address first.
Gotcha. Okay. So what would happen if somebody called you and was like, I'm not pooping every day, and that's all I said to you? What would you say?
I'd probably first ask about their fiber content, their diet, and how they're hydrating.
Okay.
Most of the time, it's diet related. And then if they're not eating enough fiber, not drinking enough fluids, that's like first order priority.
So, or you just tell them to drink one of those bulletproof coffees with the butter, and there'd be no problem.
That'll do it. That'll definitely do
Yeah.
it. They'll probably also feel really nauseous and really terrible.
Oh yeah, for sure. What do you like generally have people start with? Like, somebody calls you and they're like, listen, want to hit these goals. I want to lose weight. I don't know really where to start. Or would you be like, hey, like, here's what we're gonna do? Is it more like behavioral, or are you looking at more tangible things, or what do you usually start with?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple different ways to approach it, but what I found works the best in like a challenge setting, or when people come to me and like really want to work on their nutrition one-on-one, I almost 90% of the time, probably 95, 100% of the time, ask them to first log their food for a week or two. And there's so much awareness that comes into
Yeah.
that. Just the fact of like stopping and having to put it in, like I get it takes more time, it can be a lot more effort, but more often than not, people that do it, even if it's just for a couple weeks, are like, I learned so much about my food
Right.
behaviors and also about like my portion sizes. So getting a food scale, measuring it out at the least, and just doing that for a week or two to really like see where your baseline is.
Yeah.
And then after that, like if you want to continue to track, it depends on your goals. Like obviously somebody that has a lot stricter goals, they want to lose more weight, they want to see more body composition change. It's a little bit more important to track your
Right.
macros
Sure.
versus somebody who's just trying to have like a better relationship with food, get a little bit healthier, and learn more about just an overall healthy diet.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think, anybody listening, just track your food for a week in MyFitnessPal, and it'll just give you a lot of this. You're like, wow, I'm eating way too much fat, or I'm not getting enough protein, or I'm eating way too many calories. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Yeah, definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. And even just like tracking as you normally would, and then kind of taking a second look at that. And if your fat is like 60% of your total calories and your protein is like 10%, like obviously we have some areas of opportunity.
Nice. That's good. All right, now get into this next one. This is one thing I wanted to have you on because I have a lot of people that I ask them, about what they ate or what they've eaten today. And it'll be like noon or like 11 o'clock. And they're like, I don't eat anything before until I work out at like 11 or 12. So like meal timing, it's obviously, I kind of found like that the more consistent you can be, just the better off, your body's just regulated that way. And that's why like people that work like swing shifts and stuff like that, they generally gain a lot of weight just because they don't have that consistent eating time and stuff like that. I mean, with other sleeping schedule and stuff like that too. But is there some kind of like meal timing thing that you found works okay, or is there like, all right, if you're working out at noon, you should at least eat 3 hours before, or what's the what do you usually recommend with that meal timing wise?
Yeah, there's like a lot of nuances here, but I think general rule of thumb, I think that it is helpful to have a window of time where you're not eating, say like 12 hours overnight. But if you're like extending that to like 14, 16, 18 hours before you're eating, and then you're doing a tough workout at noon, you're probably missing some opportunity to really replete your body, at least give yourself a little bit of energy going into that workout. And you're probably going to feel a lot better too. I think also like the less or the smaller window you have, it's harder to get enough protein and overall nutrients to
Yeah.
really be able to function optimally. So
Hmm.
while I think that there are some benefits to intermittent fasting at some level, I think sometimes people are just going way too long and then their body kind of just shuts down.
Yeah. No, that's good. So then what do you usually recommend? Like, let's say somebody's working out after work. What do you usually recommend them eat? I know everybody's a little bit different, but like, what's like a general recommendation for like eating before and then eating after?
Yeah. So for most people who are coming straight from work, like having a little snack on the way over would be really helpful. It kind of depends on what time you're able to eat lunch. So if you're able to eat a meal like an hour or two before and it's a really balanced meal, you'd probably be okay.
Yeah.
Some people need to play around with this a little bit just because they don't feel well on a more full stomach when they go into
Right.
the gym. But some easy things that you can just grab for the way to the gym if you haven't had time to eat anything would be something like one of those little applesauce packets, a couple pieces of dried fruit, like dried mango, or I love those little dates or apricots. You could also just do something like half your protein shake with a half a banana just on the way to the gym. And it's really easy. And then that way you have a little something in your body to give you a little bit of quick energy, but you're not going to be weighed down by that.
Yeah. I kind of found that the like for fruit is good, like an orange is really good because I feel like it's like a fast digesting thing. It doesn't really fill you up, you know.
Yep,
Banana, like you
exactly.
said, is good. Like pretzels, I think are pretty good too. Like if
Mhm.
you're able to do that, you know.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great idea. I didn't think about pretzels, but that's
Yeah,
also a really good option.
yeah. So like I think like things like an apple or something. Sometimes it's got a lot of fiber in it. Kind of sit at the bottom of your stomach a little bit.
Yeah.
I think you
Yeah, I
want
don't
something that's
like a
just
lot
gonna
of fiber.
you want something that's just gonna digest rapidly, you know, real quick, right?
Yep.
That
Yep.
makes
Yeah.
sense.
That's why like apples are going to be a lot higher in fructose too, which for some people causes a lot of that like muscle cramping. So I think, or the, digestive cramping, but I think that the like dried fruits is just such a quick source of quick
Yeah,
energy without a lot of fiber. And that's where the banana kind of comes in. But
yeah,
pretzels, a piece of toast, half a bagel, like all of those would be good options
yeah.
too.
Now, what about after the workout? Like, when do you recommend? Like, so they have this anabolic window they call it, when your muscles are most likely going to absorb protein, and that basically your muscles want to get protein and carbs, and so it's a good time to try to get it in.
Yep.
And that's like what, like an hour after.
Yeah, that's what they say. And I don't know, Alex, if you've been keeping up with some of that, but I know like there's some debate on, what that window
Yeah,
really looks like. I think
right.
if you get something in earlier, like it's never going to be harmful for
Never be
you.
bad. Yeah,
But I usually recommend getting like somewhere between 20 and 50 grams of carbs, depending on the person, of course, and
yeah,
what your goals are. And again, like pretty easily digestible carbs, that's going to spike your insulin, which is actually really helpful for muscle protein synthesis as long as you're
right.
having that along with a protein source. So that's where like a whey protein, a Greek yogurt, a bowl of oatmeal with a little bit of protein powder in it can be really effective
Yeah,
for people who are really trying to recover quickly. If you're eating a meal within like an hour, it's probably not necessary, especially if someone's trying to lose weight and
right.
not have the extra calories. But I think for a lot of people who are really active and kind of plan it into their day, it can be really helpful.
I actually, there's this thing that I read it. I don't know, it's probably in Men's Health or something back in the day, but they recommended you have what they call waxy maize. Have you ever heard of that?
I feel like I have, but I don't remember what it is.
It's like a part of a corn, it's a part of corn, but it's basically your body, like it gives you carbohydrates, but your body doesn't digest it at all. So it kind of just like runs right through, but you get the carbohydrates that you need. So they
Yeah.
recommended doing that with your protein shake, and they made it like into a powder form.
Mm-hmm.
And so that you could get those carbohydrates in very quickly, without, and then you didn't have to digest it. So it was the best thing to have, supposedly. But after that, I never really heard about it again. And I bought this giant like tub of it. I think I still have it in the basement or something, and it's all like clumped together.
That's so funny. I think that a lot of like intro workout supplements are maltodextrin, which is usually from corn. So I wonder if it's kind of a similar concept.
Probably is, yeah, probably exactly.
Yeah, that's
Exactly the same.
interesting.
Yeah. So I think people too, they don't realize that they do need to get carbohydrates in after the workout. And
Yeah.
what's the reasoning behind that?
Yeah, I think, well, a lot of people are just scared of carbs in general,
Yeah, you're
because
right
they
about
think
that.
that there is more water that's held on to carbs, but that's
Right.
also like what allows you to like see a lot of your lean body mass. So it kind of
Yeah.
depends on the goal here again, but the carbohydrates are so important because it actually helps to shuttle the protein into the muscles. So if you have protein by itself, it's not going to as quickly be able to get there as if you pair it with a simple carbohydrate.
Sure.
And so I think that that's the biggest reason. but also like your body needs carbohydrates.
Right.
Our brain feels better, our muscles feel better. We are going to probably even sleep better with more carbohydrates. So I encourage people to like not be afraid of them, but just be mindful about the choices of how much and what kinds.
Yeah, and so your carbohydrates too, like you're burning that up when you're doing these workouts, and then you need to replenish that so that you can do these workouts again tomorrow. Is that kind of like layman's terms a little bit like that? Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Yeah, definitely. It's going to help to recover more quickly and allow you to continue to like come back to the gym every day.
Do you think like eating at consistent times is better than kind of being sporadic with it?
I do. Yeah. You mentioned earlier, our body kind of functions on the clock or a circadian rhythm.
Yeah.
And so I think that when your body starts to anticipate the times that you normally have food, it actually starts to also like create more digestive enzymes to break those foods down. They're going to also, you're a little bit more metabolically healthy oftentimes. So I think it is really helpful to eat at regular intervals for a lot of different reasons.
Mm-hmm. So then like when you're working with somebody and they are, let's say they want to do like intermittent fasting, or like when would you kind of recommend them to do this? And is this like something that they would like cycle on and off, or do you recommend them just kind of like holding on to that, or like basically doing the same thing, the intermittent fasting, like all year round?
Yeah. So whenever I start working with people, I always sit down and I talk to them for a while to really figure out their goals, because for most people who are wanting to intermittent fast, it's because they read something about it online or they saw someone post about how they lost 50 pounds intermittent fasting. So I always make sure first that they're educated on the purpose of intermittent fasting and the benefits of it, but also what type of intermittent fasting is going to work best for them. So it's very, very personalized. I think long story short, I do recommend minimum of like 12 hours for almost everyone, just because it's going to just give your body time to digest and really feel better. But for a lot of people, they like to extend that like 14, 16, 18 hours. And then you also have people that go further than that. But for most women, I would say as you get closer to like the 14, 16 hours, if you're also doing a lot of high intensity training and you're not getting all your calories in during the window that you are eating, we start to see an impact on hormone health for a lot of those women. For men, they have a little bit more flexibility to do that. And it's oftentimes actually works better for men than women. And so I think that really thinking about 12 hours as a minimum, then playing around with the other timeframes if it is something that you're looking to explore for other reasons. And some of those other reasons would just be for like insulin resistance, for example. So someone is worried about their blood sugar and they want to make sure that they're not eating too close to bedtime or first thing in the morning.
Yeah.
That can be effective. For some people, they succeed with intermittent fasting for weight loss because they're just not eating as much or as often. I know a lot of people eat really late at night, and most people aren't eating salads and chicken at 9 o'clock. So just having that cutoff time is really helpful.
Yeah, I think so too. So, I wanted to talk with you about this like nutrition coaching process. And like there's a lot of people that are just totally lost. Like I think people know kind of like the basics of like they should eat vegetables and they should eat protein, and that and a lot of it is just like it's just hard. It's hard sometimes to like bring yourself to doing that, and we have a lot of stresses and hormones and stuff like that. So like somebody that's kind of totally lost, kind of explain like how you would kind of help get them back on track, where you would start, and really where you provide the value to them.
Yeah. So again, my philosophy is that everybody is unique and everybody has different backgrounds and dieting history, things they've tried, things that have worked, not worked.
Yeah.
And also where they're going. And so I like to really meet with somebody first. Usually we recommend a free consult call just so we can get to know each other a little bit. And so we can decide, am I a good fit for them? Are they a good fit for nutrition coaching, which mostly everybody is a good fit in some capacity. And then we kind of walk through what their goals are and how can we progress towards those goals. In terms of habit setting or goal setting, I really ask them to look at and kind of visualize where do they want to be and how can we backtrack and set goals that are going to be like manageable.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to come off too hot, just like in a workout. You don't want to like,
Yeah.
Use all your energy in the first 2 minutes and then
Sure.
laying on the floor dead the rest of the time. So with nutrition, like we don't want to go 0 to 100 the
Right.
first 2 weeks. And then they're like, oh my gosh, this is like way too much. What did I get myself into?
Right.
But we also, like you said, in a 6-week challenge, we want to see people, getting motivated by seeing movement on the scale or
Yep.
so basically how I would work with them is like first 1 to 2 weeks, let's track, let's see where we have some areas of opportunity. And then we would like to kind of figure out, okay, is tracking something that is doable for you on an ongoing basis? And I kind of have that second set of eyes to say, hey, doing a really good job with XYZ. Next week, let's focus on, water intake or just getting that protein a little bit higher. If somebody doesn't want to track and that's overwhelming for them, totally fine. I've used a lot of different methods. So we could talk about sending me a picture of your plate or sending me, maybe it's not a food related goal. Maybe it's more of, hey, I really want to make sure that I'm eating, 3 times per day versus snacking through the entire weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And so just like kind of going through maybe some meal planning tactics and setting some goals around that we can measure, because I think whatever's measured is managed.
Yeah.
So I'm really open to a lot of different things, but I always make sure that like we have something that we can track week to week to make sure that they're making progress.
Yeah. I like that, having that second set of eyes too. It gives them a little bit of confidence. It gives them that confidence,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
to
And also,
like,
someone's looking, like you're going to do probably better because you know that I'm going to be paying attention.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes, I would definitely be scared if I was eating poorly and then I had to go down and call with you after that. That would definitely motivate me, Ari. So, can it be like something as simple as like, hey, this week I want you to drink this much water. Like, let's say somebody's totally lost and it's just like more of a behavioral goal. Is that something that you've done too in the past?
Yeah. Yeah. I think you'd be so surprised at like how just drinking more water can make a huge difference in how someone feels. And
Just like
so,
energy level wise, probably too, you know what I mean?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of people, I mean, again, going back to the beginning, when you say that they set unrealistic goals, a lot of people think that they have to do like these huge, grand changes to see results. And really it's just usually tweaking 1 or 2 things that they can sustain over weeks at a time. That's going to make the biggest difference.
Yeah. No, that's great. Yeah. And then when you're working with like athletes and performers and stuff like that, like, let's say, I'm trying to think like, on like, let's say someone's doing a game day, like on their game day, is it like, how do you approach them if they got a basketball game at 7 o'clock at night? Is there some kind of nutrition protocol you work with them, or have you done that in the past? Or I'm just always curious about that because I work with a lot of athletes and stuff like that. And I'm always, with like high school kids, it's a little harder, obviously, because usually they're just like, well, we got our team dinner. It's like pasta or whatever. But have you worked with athletes, and like what is generally like the main objective for you?
Yeah. Yeah. I think with working with athletes, it's definitely a whole different ball game. In a sense, I mean, it's the same, but different. And it's usually just because they have a very specific goal or objective. And generally what we do in those situations is we really have to focus on, it depends on the sport, right? So like baseball is going to be a lot different than, football or lacrosse or something like that. And so I think that the biggest things that I start with those athletes is number one, are you getting enough fuel and the right types of fuel? And you'd be surprised that high school, I really see that they're kind of functioning off of a lot of like sugars, pastas, like peanut butter sandwiches, which is okay. But I think that for their growing bodies, they also may need to make sure some of those micronutrients, they're getting enough of those. And I think that's something that I see a lot of younger athletes really missing out on.
Yeah.
So I think that, when we talk about pregame fueling, that's really important. So really making sure that when they're on the bus or they're preparing for any type of competition, that they're learning what their bodies tolerate before competition. So having a little bit of time to play around with pregame fuel, because
Yeah.
sometimes what works for one person, the other person, like you said, is like running to the bathroom because they feel terrible.
Yeah.
And so kind of having a little bit of trial and error there. And
Yeah.
then if someone's doing a game or a match game, whatever it is, that's longer than 60 to 90 minutes and it's really intense, we would need to look at, can you get something in, intra workout
Yeah.
or intra game or
While you're playing. Yeah.
yeah. And that's something that also like takes some trial and error. And so that's where I kind of come in, is like, hey, these are some of the things that are going to give you quick energy, but they're not going to feel heavy. And then when you're done working out, if you have a game, a lot of people are going into 2-a-days this summer. This is going to be huge,
Right.
because you have to make sure that like you're getting in enough food for that afternoon workout, but you also don't want to feel like you're so heavy because you had to eat so much in a small window of time that then you're feeling like garbage. So I don't know if I answered the question. That's kind of a long drawn answer,
So
but
some of this stuff is just like you'd recommend you got to play around with this a little bit, and then you're gonna find what works best for you. But it's almost got to be like intentional. You got to be intentional about it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's trial and error, and that's where I can just think of like one high school athlete I worked with in particular. If they're motivated, it works really well. We say, hey, try this for this week. Let me know how your game goes. If we need to tweak things, then we have time to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's great. I was going to ask you last thing here too is, so you look like you've like gotten in great shape recently. Have you done anything differently or like recently in the past couple months?
Yeah.
Eating-wise?
Yeah. So it's funny because as a dietitian, like you'd think that I'd always have all the answers for myself or like follow them.
Yeah.
But sometimes we don't always practice what we preach. And so the biggest thing for me is like, number one, consistency. I think it's really easy when you're busy during the day to not eat enough and then eat like all of your food right before bedtime.
Yeah.
So that's something that I've changed, is really trying to eat in more regular intervals.
Yeah.
I really focus on getting more carbs intentionally. So I was the kind of person for a long time that was kind of afraid of carbs. And as I kind of learned how important they are for people who are doing higher intensity exercise, the timing of them, I think, is really huge. And also just making sure that you're getting enough. It always comes back to like, are you getting enough? And so I think a lot of my female clients actually get annoyed because I'm always like, no, you need to eat more. And they're like, but wait. And I'm like, okay, but like you need to eat more of the right things and at the right times. And I think that you'll see your body composition change when you're giving it what it needs.
Yep. I was actually just training somebody, personal training. We're looking at her nutrition and she's like, I do 1,200 calories a day. I'm like, okay, why is that? She's like, well, I've done that for the last 30 years. She's like, I was I did Weight Watchers and that's what they recommended of her. So I was like I was creating a little chart for her on what her ideal calorie should be. And it was like, 1,400, 1,450. And I mean, I thought this lady was going to like choke me out or something, because it was just like, I don't think that, it's just hard to convince somebody that eating more is actually better. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, to answer your question, that's the biggest thing, is just actually eating enough.
Right. And just feeling your body, the more energy you have, it'll just feel so much better. That's how I kind of feel. So,
Yeah, it's amazing. And every phase of life is different. I think that as you get older, and a lot of like people I've worked with who are maybe 50s, 60s, 70s, what works for them is completely different than what works, in your 20s and probably early 30s. So I think it's all about figuring out what's best for you. But I think that definitely being willing to commit to something, to try it for more than 2 weeks and see if it actually does help to support your goals.
Yep. Nice. So what'd you end up changing up?
Yeah. So basically what I did is I set my calories, I increased my carbs by a lot more than I thought, just consistent with protein, and actually lowered my fats a little bit. And I just did it really consistently. I tracked and measured everything I was eating for a period of time, and trial and error. But I didn't, when I saw the scale say go up a few pounds, I wasn't like, oh my gosh, I can't do this, or even go down, whatever direction. it is. But I think that just committing and sticking to something, but also just consistency and higher carbs.
Gotcha. Yeah. That's really great to hear. Now I just noticed that I'm like, damn, Ari's looking looking pretty ripped. I figured you were switching something up or whatever.
Yeah, yeah, it's funny because I never really like tracked like that before. I was just like,
Yeah.
oh, like I feel like I know what I'm eating. But when I actually plugged it in and like tried to hit a certain number of calories, I was like, oh my gosh, that's actually really hard. And so over time, I
Right.
just kept increasing and felt like I was eating a ton,
Yeah.
but your body adapts to it.
Mm-hmm. No, that's good. That's good advice. All right. Last thing I got for you. This is very important. It's the most important thing. St. Patrick's Day is on a Friday this year.
Yep.
Okay. So what are your plans for that?
Well, I'm coaching a class for you.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's gonna be a super fun. And then afterwards, I don't know. I'm not a big St. Patty's Day person, but I always enjoy just going out and like immersing myself in the experience. So I might head down to downtown Willoughby and watch all of the people enjoying themselves
The
and maybe
shenanigans.
have a
Yeah.
couple drinks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great answer.
What are you doing? That is my question.
You know what? I can't tell you that at the moment. That's not appropriate for this podcast, but
All right, cool. We'll talk about it later.
I appreciate you covering my class also.
Of course.
Well, thanks for coming on again, and that was honestly invaluable information. And if someone's listening to this, check out Ari's Instagram page at Ariana RDN.
Yep, it's Ariana underscore RDN.
Yeah, and then you have a website.
I don't anymore because I found that more people were finding me on Instagram and like no one was visiting my website. So I'm
Just
like,
really didn't need that. Yeah.
both.
Oh, that's good. And then if somebody wants on a call with you, they just book a 10-minute discovery call, and then that's free.
Yep.
And all it is they, they're just gonna see, you're gonna talk about the goals and all that with them, just learn more about them and see if that's the right fit for them. And then they can kind of proceed to do a monthly thing with you, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's pretty minimal commitment. I would say that like, like I said before, I'm really open to
Yeah.
whatever works best for the person, but I work with anyone and everyone. So it doesn't have to be somebody that like if you don't even want to track macros for the first week or two, like I'm okay with that. I want to talk
Yeah.
about what works for you.
Yeah. No, I know that's great. Yeah, and you probably I take it you're one of those people that kind of wants to be fired. You know what I mean? You want to set these people up so that 6 months are like, hey, I don't need you anymore. And you're like, I did my job. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, I don't want to work with people for three years or
Right.
even 2 years. Like I want them to feel really empowered to like do these things themselves and feel like they know how to be successful. And that's really my goal and how I coach is finding ways to make you self-sufficient and also learn, me just not giving you macros or telling you exactly what to eat.
I like that. All right, Ari. Well, thanks for coming on again. I really appreciate it. And I'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Have a good weekend.
Yeah.